She just came to sign her son up for karate. Nothing more. But when the coach singled her out, mocked her in front of everyone and forced her onto the mat, unaware he was picking a fight with a third-degree black belt, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't even take off her cardigan, but in under 10 seconds, he hit the floor so hard the entire class went silent. Before we reveal the full story, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments below where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. East Valley Karate Club didn't need a flashy sign, just a storefront with foam-tiled floors and 2 glass trophy cases by the entrance. That was the whole point. If you had to look for it, you weren't serious about martial arts. It sat nestled in that corner of the city where strip malls tried their best to look upscale, and everyone inside had matching uniforms. The air buzzed with shouts and the sharp slap of bare feet on vinyl mats, banners hung proudly on the walls, discipline, respect, power, alongside photos of past champions with their medals and trophies. A clunky stereo played rhythmic kiais from a training CD. The whole space had the restless energy of a place trying very hard to look serious. Marianne Keller didn't look like she belonged there at all. Hell, she didn't even try to. There she stood, just inside the entrance, hands loosely tucked in the pockets of her worn navy cardigan, her posture relaxed, almost absent-minded. Her grey slacks were neatly pressed, if slightly faded at the knees. Flat canvas shoes, not sneakers, just quiet, functional shoes peeked out from beneath the hem. Nothing about her suggested martial arts expertise. She looked like someone who'd wandered in to ask directions or maybe sign up her kid for something, which in fact she had. Her son Leo stood beside her, 15, all awkward limbs and nervous energy bundled inside a thrift store hoodie. He was excited. She could feel it radiating off him. It reminded her of when he used to shake before school field trips, not out of fear, just anticipation too big for his body. A staff member behind the front desk handed Marianne a clipboard with a waiver attached. "He'll need this signed before he can step on the mat," the young woman said, smiling at Leo. Marianne thanked her, stepped aside, and let her son fill it out. "First class is free," the receptionist added. "If he likes it, we can set up a trial month." Marianne nodded, watching the class. She tilted her head slightly, observing the footwork more than the punches. One of the students was shifting weight, too far forward during a pivot. Another had a sloppy guard. She didn't say anything. The instructor caught her eye for a moment. Big guy, late 40s, arms like tree trunks stuffed into a black GI that strained against his shoulders. He wore the kind of confident grin that suggested he'd been in charge for a very long time. His name, according to the embroidery on his uniform, was Ron. "Don't worry, folks," he called out to the class. "No overprotective parents allowed on the mat. We can break the kids without breaking the moms." A few of the teens laughed, unsure if it was a joke. Others exchanged glances, accustomed to their instructor's particular brand of humor. Marianne didn't flinch. Leo gave her a sidelong glance. "It's fine," she said softly, just to him. "You go ahead." He finished the waiver and jogged to join the class. Marianne moved to a bench near the wall, setting her purse at her feet. She sat with quiet poise, spine straight, one leg crossed over the other. No phone in hand, just watching. Leo was doing basic drills now, mimicking the others. Marianne smiled faintly at his enthusiasm. His form was raw, but his timing wasn't bad. She glanced around at the other parents, mostly on their phones or scrolling. With one eye on the mat, no one else seemed to be paying much attention to the actual technique being taught. Marianne kept her focus on the rhythm of the class. She didn't look impressed or skeptical, just attentive. The instructor, Ron, called for a break and strutted past the bench. "You following along back there?" he asked Marianne with a grin. "Trying," she said politely. Ron laughed. "Don't worry, we'll have him breaking boards in no time." "I hope not," Marianne said lightly. "I'd prefer he learns to avoid breaking things. That Made him pause. She didn't smile, just uncrossed her legs, shifted slightly and went back to watching the class. Ron blinked, then clapped his hands. "All right, back at it." The teens scrambled up, eager. Leo was among them, eyes bright. Marianne didn't say anything else for the rest of the session. She just watched. The stance corrections, the lazy footwork, the imbalance in a few of the combos. She watched it all. Ron Lancaster had been running the East Valley Karate Club for 11 years, and he wore that tenure like a medal. He'd started it out of a rented storefront next to a laundromat. Now it took up half a plaza with foam-tiled floors, promotional banners, and enough trophies to fill those 2 glass cases by the entrance. He'd trained hundreds of kids, won local titles, and had the kind of deep-voiced authority that made nervous parents sign up before reading the small print. But Ron didn't like being watched, not closely. Not by someone sitting quiet on the bench. With a face that didn't flinch at his jokes, he remembered Marianne from that first session, not because she'd said anything disrespectful, but because she hadn't. That calm stare, that measured silence. It bothered him. It scratched at something he didn't like acknowledging. So when she showed up again for Leo's second class, he noticed her the moment she walked in. Same cardigan, same quiet posture, same stillness. She nodded politely, sat on the bench, and said nothing. Ron called the group to line up. Leo was near the back. Ron liked the kid, eager, respectful, coachable. But his mom was still a mystery, and Ron didn't like mysteries in his dojo. He strutted across the mats, barking commands, correcting stances with sharp taps to the knees. As he paced, he caught Marianne's gaze again, still watching, still calm. He cracked a joke mid-drill. "Hope nobody's mom is grading me from the peanut gallery." A few of the kids snorted. One even turned to look at her. Marianne didn't blink. She just tilted her head slightly and kept watching. Ron scowled. He called for a water break and turned toward the assistant instructor, Jeremy, a lanky college kid who'd started helping out on weeknights. "Does she come every time?" Ron asked under his breath. Jeremy shrugged. "I guess. Maybe she's nervous. First time a parent." Ron grunted. "She doesn't look nervous. She looks like she's judging footwork." Jeremy laughed. "Maybe she's just bored." Ron turned back to the class. "All right, back up, let's go." They ran a few kata routines, then partner drills. Ron noticed Leo checking to see if his mum was watching. She was. Still no phone in hand, no idle scrolling, just attention. It gnawed at him. After class, while the kids lined up for a final bow, Ron raised his voice for the parents' benefit. "We've got sparring week coming up," he said. "Make sure your kids bring mouthguards and leave the advice at home. We don't need sideline coaches, especially the ones with cardigans instead of black belts." Some parents chuckled. Ron looked toward Marianne. She didn't laugh, she didn't frown. She just stood and picked up her purse. Ron felt a flicker of something. He didn't know what. Annoyance, maybe. Or discomfort. Like he'd poked at something he didn't understand. Later that night, while cleaning up, he muttered to Jeremy, "You think she's one of those people who took a self-defense class once and thinks she knows everything?" Jeremy laughed. "Maybe she just likes watching her kid." "Yeah," Ron said, but he didn't believe it. Something about the way she looked at the class, at him, had stuck. Calm, not superior. Curious, not critical, but it still got under his skin, and the next time she walked through that door, Ron would be ready to remind her who the sensei was. It was the 4th class when things turned. Marianne had kept her distance, as always, punctual and quiet, observant. She sat in the same corner of the dojo, never speaking out, never interfering. She'd answer if spoken to, but never offered anything first. She let the program run its course, let Leo learn his drills and make his mistakes. Leo was improving, not dramatically, no instant prodigy, but steadily. He'd started standing straighter. At home, taking up more space. Sometimes she'd catch him practicing stances in the hallway mirror when he thought no one was looking. Once she heard him in the bathroom whispering "Kiai" under his breath, testing how it felt in his mouth. It warmed something in her, something that had been dormant for years. Not the competitive fire she'd once known, but something gentler. She remembered her own first sensei, an elderly Japanese man who never raised his voice and could drop men twice his size without seeming to move. How he'd told her, "The strongest trees have the quietest roots." She'd been 8 then, just a skinny kid with too much energy and not enough words. Martial arts had given her language when her mouth couldn't find it, structure when her life lacked it, purpose when nothing else made sense. She'd never wanted Leo to need it the way she had. But watching him find his footing now, literally and figuratively, she recognized the same relief, the same discovery. So she sat and watched and kept her knowledge to herself. But Ron couldn't leave it alone. He was tired of that feeling, that unshakable sense that her silence meant something, that he was being weighed somehow and found lacking. It wasn't that she criticized. She didn't even react. But that was worse, because it meant she saw everything. That night, the class was working partner drills again. Simple foot sweep entries and pivot throws. Nothing too dangerous, just enough to give the kids a taste of momentum and timing. Leo was paired with a boy about his size. They were both trying their best, stumbling through it. Ron hovered nearby, barking occasional tips. "Lower your base, don't drag, snap the motion." He turned to the group and clapped. "All right, stop. We're going to demo the right way." He gestured to Jeremy. "Come here. Let's show them what it's supposed to look like." Jeremy stepped forward. Ron squared off, demonstrating a basic o-uchi-gari. It was controlled, but snappy. Jeremy hit the mat with a dull thud. "That's how you do it," Ron said, grinning. "And don't worry, he's made of rubber." Some of the kids laughed. Ron turned, eyes sliding to Marianne. Still no reaction. He felt a pulse of irritation. "Actually," he said louder now, "we've got a visitor who's been watching us closely for a few weeks now." A few heads turned toward the bench. Ron motioned to her. "You know, sometimes parents have a lot of advice. Some even think they know better than the guy with the black belt." A few kids laughed, awkward, confused. Ron grinned. "What do you say, Ms. Keller? Want to give it a try?" Marianne blinked. "Excuse me?" "Come on," he said. "Step on the mat. Let's show the kids what you've been thinking this whole time." Jeremy chuckled, nervously. "Ron!" "It's all in good fun," Ron said, raising his hands. "We'll keep it light." For a moment, no one breathed. Marianne looked at him for a long second, long enough that he wondered if she was going to walk out. Then, slowly, she stood. "All right," she said softly. The room was dead silent. She stepped onto the mat without theatrics, slipping off her shoes at the edge. Her cardigan hung loose over her frame. She didn't roll up the sleeves, didn't adjust her stance, just stood there. Ron gestured to the center. "Let's say I try a grab. Simple shoulder lock." Marianne nodded once. He moved toward her, casual but firm, hands up, telegraphing his motion like a stage performer. He reached, and suddenly he wasn't standing anymore. There was a blur, a pivot, a snap of cloth and breath, then thud. He was flat on his back. The dojo gasped. Jeremy's mouth fell open. Marianne stepped back, hands at her sides. Ron blinked up at the ceiling. The mat felt colder than usual. He sat up slowly. "What was that?" Marianne tilted her head slightly. "Osotogari. Slight variation on entry." She extended a hand to help him up. He hesitated, then took it. Her grip was steady, effortless. She pulled him to his feet like it was nothing. The kids stared. One whispered, "What just happened?" Another murmured, "Did he let her?" But Jeremy had seen enough to know better. He took a slow breath. "She didn't muscle it," he whispered. "She just knew." Ron looked at her, his ears red. "You trained." Marianne didn't gloat, didn't smile. She just said yes. The mat settled. The buzz of voices softened. Marianne stepped back to the edge, picking up her cardigan sleeve where it had slid slightly past her wrist. Her breathing wasn't even elevated. Ron dusted off his GI pants. "Well," he muttered, loud enough for the room to hear, "you caught me off guard." There was a ripple of half-laughter, the kind people use when they're not sure who's in charge anymore. Ron clapped his hands. "Okay, folks, let's reset." But no one moved right away. The tension in the air had shifted, subtly, but definitely. The kids looked at Marianne now, not with curiosity or mockery, but with something new, awareness. Some looked at Ron too, uncertain whether the tone had changed permanently. Jeremy whispered, "Ron, maybe let it go." But Ron didn't. "I mean, no offense," he said, turning toward her again. "It's impressive. Didn't think you had a background like that." Marianne said nothing. Ron smiled. "Bet it's been a while, though, right?" A pause. "Yes," she said simply. In few years." "Right," he said again, nodding. "Well, martial arts is one of those things. If you don't use it, you lose it." Marianne tilted her head. "Some parts, yes." Ron laughed, gesturing toward Jeremy. "Like flexibility, speed, recovery time. It's all different when you're not training actively. Your body forgets things." "I suppose that depends on how you trained," she said. Another pause. Jeremy was staring at the ground now, jaw tight. Ron raised his eyebrows. "I'm just saying, one throw doesn't make a fighter." "No," she agreed. "That's true. So let's run it again." Jeremy turned. "Ron, maybe—" Ron waved him off. "No, it's fine. Nothing aggressive. Just want to show a few counters. Good for the class to see real movement." Marianne looked at him. Her expression hadn't changed once. All right. This time, they squared off properly. Ron adjusted his stance. A little wider, a little lower. There was heat behind his focus now, not just performance. This wasn't a class anymore. It was something else. He feinted with a shoulder. Marianne didn't react. He stepped in fast. A hip throw this time. Marianne moved like water, pivoted, turned. Thud. Ron was down again, harder. The room gasped. He rolled once, slapped the mat and sat up, his expression flushed, hair damp with sweat. "Now!" Marianne didn't move toward him this time. He stood on his own. Someone at the back whispered. She didn't even breathe hard. Ron exhaled through his nose, quick and sharp. All right. You've got some good instincts," Jeremy muttered. Under his breath, "That wasn't instinct." Ron looked at Marianne again. "What style?" "A mix," she said. "Started in Shotokan, moved into Jujutsu, later Kenpo, then some Aikido." Jeremy choked slightly. Ron blinked. "All of them?" "Yes." There was silence. The kind that presses into your ears. Across the room, a teenage boy nudged his friend and whispered, "Is this for real?" Others had their phones out now, not mocking but capturing something they couldn't quite believe. One girl's eyes were wide with a strange mix of shock and something that looked like hope. From the corner, another parent, a woman who'd been scrolling mindlessly on her phone minutes earlier, was now leaning forward, brow furrowed. She looked from Ron to Marianne and back again, trying to process the shift that had just happened. The entire dynamic of the room had changed. The hierarchy Ron had so carefully built, instructor at the top, students in the middle, parents as passive observers, had been silently disrupted. Not with aggression, not with challenge, just with quiet, undeniable skill. Jeremy asked cautiously, "You said you trained for a few years." Marianne shrugged. "About 22. One of the older teens on the mat whispered, "No way." Ron adjusted. His GI cleared his throat. "Well, there it is. Black belt, 3rd degree." Another beat of silence. Leo stood frozen at the edge of the group, his face a mixture of shock and something else. Something that looked almost like pride, but was tinged with confusion. His eyes darted between his mother and his instructor. trying to reconcile the woman who made his lunches with the woman who had just thrown a black belt instructor to the ground. Twice. A girl next to him whispered, "Is that really your mum?" Leo nodded slowly. I didn't know." "How could you not know your mom's a ninja?" the boy hissed. Leo shrugged, still staring. "She never said anything." Jeremy overheard and gave Leo a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Sometimes the best ones never do, kid." Marianne turned to leave the mat. She stepped back into her loafers, picked up her tote. "Thank you for letting me participate," she said gently. It was helpful. Ron opened his mouth, then closed it. She turned to leave, calm as ever, and this time nobody laughed. They just watched her go. The next class started quieter. The usual banter among students was still there, but softer now, calmer. Eyes drifted toward the door more than usual. Conversation slowed whenever it opened. Jeremy set up the mats like always, but he moved with more purpose. Ron was already there, stretching longer than usual, shoulders tight. When Marianne arrived, exactly on time, not a minute early, not a second late, something shifted in the air. She walked in wearing the same loose cardigan, the same flats, carrying the same tote. Nothing about her had changed, but now everyone watched her. This time no one smirked. Ron straightened up, forcing a casual tone. "Good to see you again." Marianne nodded politely. "Evening." "Hope you're ready," he said, as if nothing had happened the previous week. "We're covering directional blocks today." "Sounds good." The class lined up for warm-ups. Marianne stood at the back. Not isolated, just still, a presence. She didn't perform the stretches like a show. She simply moved, and it was obvious that everything she did came from habit, old embedded muscle memory, precision wrapped in quiet. When Ron demonstrated the first combination, step, block, counter, he used Jeremy as his partner again. "Watch the hands," he said. "We're not looking for power, just intention. Let your opponent tell you where they're going." His movements were clean, controlled, but something was different in his voice. No mockery, no bravado, just instruction. He caught Marianne's eyes once, mid-demonstration. She didn't nod, she didn't smile, just watched. When it came time to pair off, several students hesitated. Then one of the teenage girls, Natalie with the purple belt, walked toward her. "Ms. Keller, could I train with you?" Marianne looked surprised. "Of course." They bowed, then began slowly. Marianne adjusted her pace to match the girls, offering small corrections without ever raising her voice. "Your elbow," she said softly. "It wants to rise. Let it fall. Gravity will help you." Natalie tried again. This time the motion looked better, smoother, more honest. "Better," Marianne said. Ron noticed. Across the room, another student asked, "Can I switch partners with you next round? I want to try that flow thing she did." Jeremy raised his eyebrows, hiding a smile. For the first time in a long while, the dojo felt like it was leaning forward, curious, engaged. Marianne hadn't taken over the class, but her presence shifted the whole rhythm, slowed things down, focused them. Midway through, Ron stepped in. "Mind if I jump in?" he asked, half grinning at Marianne. "We'll give Natalie a rest." Marianne nodded once. "Sure." They squared up again. But this time, there was no challenge in it, no unspoken duel. Just form. Ron attacked lightly. She blocked. He pivoted. She redirected. They moved through the sequence, both adjusting, both listening. It lasted less than a minute, but when they bowed out, something unspoken had settled between them. Ron looked at her and said, "You're good." Marianne raised an eyebrow. "You sound surprised," he chuckled. "I was. Not anymore." They shook hands. By the end of class, several students lingered. "Will you be here next week?" one asked. "I'd like to," Marianne replied. "Can you show me that shoulder redirect again?" "Of course," even Jeremy chimed in. "If you ever wanted to run a workshop." Marianne held up her hands, smiling faintly. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Ron stepped forward. Actually, I've been thinking. Marianne turned. You've got control, precision. If you're willing, I'd like to invite you to co-teach next month's adult seminar. There was a pause. Marianne looked at him carefully, then nodded. I'd be happy to. The seminar came and went. Marianne taught just one segment, 20 minutes on redirection, foot placement, and how to neutralize force without ever escalating it. She didn't speak much, she just moved, and that was enough. The adults in the room, some of them martial artists, with decades of experience, watched with the focused attention usually reserved for high-level tournaments. She demonstrated techniques so subtle they looked like nothing at first glance. No dramatic kicks or flying takedowns, just tiny adjustments in weight distribution, minor shifts in hand placement, the difference between resistance and redirection. Everyone wants to be the strongest person in the room, she told them, voice soft but carrying to every corner. But water doesn't try to be stronger than rock. It simply finds the path of least resistance. One man, a burly construction worker, with 14 years of karate experience, tried to resist her demonstration. She simply altered her angle by 2 inches, and he found himself off balance, caught in his own momentum. Fighting force with force is like trying to stop a river with your hands, she said. Let it flow past you, then guide it where you want it to go. The room was silent, except for the soft sound of feet on mats and the occasional exhale of understanding. Ron stood differently now, watching her teach. Less dominant posture, more receptive, learning rather than evaluating. Somewhere along the line, the balance had shifted between them, not into superiority, but into mutual respect. By the time she bowed out at the end, more than one student came forward, not to ask questions, but to say thank you. Some shook her hand. One just stood silently and bowed, which Marianne returned without a word. She packed up her tote like always. Same cardigan, same flats. No medals, no belts on display. But everyone knew who she was now. As she stepped through the door, Ron caught, up beside her. You know, he said, I think I learned more from you than anyone in years. Marianne gave him a soft look. Then it was worth showing up. He hesitated. Can I ask, why didn't you say anything before? She thought for a moment. Would you have listened? Ron blinked, then laughed just once. Fair. A pause stretched between them. Comfortable now. Why did you stop? He asked more gently. With your training, your skill level, you could have had your own place, bigger than this. Marianne looked out at the parking lot where Leo was waiting, by their modest sedan. Her son was different now, standing straighter, more confident. He was showing another boy a technique, his movements precise in a way they hadn't been before. My husband died when Leo was 7, she said quietly. He had cancer. It was long, and it was hard. Afterward, I needed to be a mother more than I needed to be a fighter. Ron nodded slowly. I never quit training, she continued. I just stopped competing, stopped teaching. Priorities change. But now, she smiled, a small one but genuine. Now Leo is finding his way, and maybe I'm remembering mine. Ron didn't press further. Instead, he extended his hand, not the usual tight grip he offered others, but something more measured. An equals gesture. The door is always open, he said, for both of you. Marianne shook his hand. Thank you. They parted ways with a nod, and Marianne walked away, calm, measured, quiet, the same way she had arrived. Except this time, no one saw her as just some simple woman anymore. They saw her as what she had always been. Master who never needed to say a word to be heard. Have you ever walked into a room where no one expected anything of you and proven them completely wrong? Or maybe you've seen someone quietly reveal a skill so powerful it changed how everyone looked at them? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If Marianne reminded you of someone in your life or of the strength you carry yourself, hit the like button. It really helps this channel grow. And if you want more stories about ordinary women doing extraordinary things without asking for permission, make sure you're subscribed with the bell turned on so you don't miss tomorrow's video. And hey, if someone in your life has ever been underestimated, share this with them. They might need it more than you think. Our other stories should be popping up on your screen right now. Choose your next one, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.